Welcome back in. We mentioned earlier, Maryland not only elected its first black governor, but also its first black attorney general. Anthony Brown will move from the state legislature to be Maryland's top law enforcement officer. And there are a lot of issues for him to tackle, including crime. Anthony Brown joins me now. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's great being with you. Really excited about the outcome in November's 8th election, up and down the ticket. And I'm really excited about being Maryland's next chief legal officer.
Let's start there with the election, because your opponent has not conceded yet, despite your overwhelming win and officials saying there's no evidence of any of the claims that he's making. But this is part of a national conversation that we've been having as reporters to make sure that people are informed about the truth, election integrity, what's happening and what's not. How do you view your responsibility vis-a-vis election integrity and the process, especially as we head into potential misinformation campaigns going into 2024?
Sure. And, recently Maryland was recognized as having I think it ranked #2 in a recent survey when it comes to election integrity and the manner in which we protect and safeguard every Marylander's right to vote. For those who are eligible to vote, we put in place a number of laws to make sure that we can get after those who engage in voter suppression. We use the best technologies. Certainly our election laws make the access to the ballot very broad and accessible. Early voting, long hours, many locations. Look, I was concerned when my opponent, right before the election, encouraged voters to wait until 6 p.m. on election night, believing that would somehow delay the ability of voters to cast their vote and somehow perhaps spoil the outcome or support a notion that there was, fraud involved in the election. We've got a good system in Maryland, and we're vigilant. We protect it. And as the Attorney General, working with the state prosecutor, shared responsibility to address voter suppression efforts.
So a lot of folks have asked you about crime, but I actually want to ask you about money. The AG's office recently announced in Maryland a $60 million chunk of an opioid-related settlement is going to go to counties in Maryland. What are your priorities for corporate misconduct and white-collar crime?
Sure. Look, we have to hold all accountable, whether you're a corporate entity, an individual, when your actions, your conduct inflict harm on Marylanders. So yes, that's true when you're talking about violent crime, but when it's also when you think about things like gun manufacturers, opioid manufacturers, also when it comes to things like those who discriminate in housing. The Attorney General has a responsibility to protect the interests of Marylanders. My approach often is to let's resolve issues before they rise to the level of having to bring enforcement actions or lawsuits. But at the end of the day, the Attorney General needs to use all of the authorities at my disposal as soon as I become Attorney General to protect the rights and the interests of Marylanders. And if that means going after manufacturers, whether it's, we've got the opioid settlement that you just mentioned years ago, the tobacco litigation, and next may very well be gun manufacturer litigation.
Let me ask you about one of those authorities that's new to your office. Maryland recently created the Independent Investigations Office, headed by Dana Mulhauser, that sits in the Attorney General's office, that investigates police-involved deaths. What are your priorities for that office, and will it continue?
Sure. We want to make sure that it's fully resourced, and I know that Brian Frosch, the current Attorney General, has been recruiting and hiring some really competent investigators and prosecutors. We need to make sure that we are improving, the relationships between our office and the Maryland State Police, because they'll be assisting us in those investigations. Need to send a clear signal to states' attorneys around the state of Maryland, as well as local law enforcement, that this is a responsibility of the Attorney General. We need to do it in cooperation with local officials. So right now, I think they've handled as many as 25 5 cases at different levels of investigation, and I suspect that there will continue to be some. It's not just police-involved death where perhaps there may be sign or evidence of misconduct. It could also include a case where if a law enforcement officer, struck a pedestrian in a crosswalk accidentally, we investigate those as well. So some of them are accidental,
Right.
some of them are intentional, some of them are misconduct, and others aren't.
Well, Mr. Attorney General-elect, thank you for taking the time with us. Congratulations and good luck getting started.
Thank you very much.